We're here today for another session of Optimal Work. Sharif here with Dr. Kevin Majors.
Hello.
And this time we want to do a real deep dive into one of our core concepts, one of our core practices, which is reframing. So first, maybe just start out with a definition, just so you kind of know what we're talking about. Hopefully you know by now if you've been using Optimal Work for a while or been in. So Kevin, do you have a definition, airtight, real concise?
Yes, it is the activation of the ventral medial prefrontal cortex in the face of a challenge. Or should I say the right brain's ventral medial prefrontal cortex. So reframing is a physical thing that takes place in the brain, but it's what happens when you flip your view deliberately. Something that you had been viewing as a threat, now you view it as an opportunity. And that is something now that you're able to approach. So reframing is when you put it in a new frame, which is a whole new context. Or maybe you should say the real context, because reframing is actually about bringing things into the big picture of reality. So now you're contextualizing them. And so you're seeing whatever this is in the big picture of your life.
Mm-hmm. So the one example that we often use is soreness when you're climbing a mountain or doing any form of exercise. Really, is that might be something you complain about. We know that complaining is the opposite of reframing. It has a negative view of the challenge. But then you see, oh wait,
that same part of the brain actually. Yes.
So you see, hey, wait, this soreness is actually here for me to grow, get stronger or faster or whatever it is. So you see it within a new light, and that always involves a new context of now seeing it kind of transcending the original context. Now, instead of seeing it just about comfort, now you're seeing it in terms of like a bigger purpose in your life.
Exactly. So soreness is a fantastic example. Tiredness is, it needs to be reframed, to see that's where also in life, that's often where the most growth is occurring. Mm-hmm. Adrenaline itself, and this, so my specialty has always been treating anxiety. And it was when I actually discovered reframing in a footnote in a book. It's still a bit in the text, but it's a book called The Human Amygdala. Mm-hmm. And it's going through the architecture of the amygdala and the different projections that go into it, and how does the upper cortex modulate the amygdala. Mm-hmm. And that's where I saw that there's this profound connection between when you deliberately see that something is to be approached, that's an opportunity, and that goes right through your connector in the brain, the anterior cingulate, and reaches in and affects your amygdala directly. And what it does is it makes any kind of safety learning happen much faster. So if you're approaching something unwillingly, you don't really get used to it, and you don't get over the anxiety, at least not nearly as fast as you do when you approach it willingly. And so at the time I was trying to figure out, how does willingness fit into all this? And and if that's why you can't force people to do exposure exercises. They need to willingly do the exposure where they're saying, okay, I'm willing to go on the balcony. I'm willing to, touch my face without washing my hands, or whatever the fear is, but they have to do it willingly. And it's because then they're seeing it as an opportunity. And so the reframing is the beginning of a whole cascade of effects in the brain that in the end lets people readjust their fears very fast. But so that was how I kind of first got into it. But then you see that anxiety itself is adrenaline experienced with a negative frame. That they're seeing the adrenaline as something bad and something they're wishing they could lower. And then they just experience it peripherally, because the negative frame puts adrenaline into the body instead of into the brain. But with the positive frame to the adrenaline, bring it on, I need it to do well here. So I hit the high note, or I do well on the test, and then the adrenaline just helps your performance. But that depends on the frame. It's fascinating how many things even hunger itself, we now know. Hunger itself, you could say, is a hormone, ghrelin, with a negative frame. and you experience it as something bad. But ghrelin actually makes people smarter. So it heightens their ability to focus, and it improves their memory, and has all these other neurostimulative effects. And so you can not, people need to eat to some extent, but there is actually a lot of good that happens, and so that makes it much easier then for people to fast or do other things. Anyway, just to say, we can experience things in ourselves with a negative frame or a positive frame, and it completely changes how it feels.
Mm-hmm. And you, like, one common criticism might be, oh, you're just lying to yourself. You're just convincing yourself that something is good when it's not. Or so how do you distinguish? What are there kind of
I have a
related
test.
approaches? You have a test.
Yeah, there's a test that determines, Sharif, if people are lying to themselves.
Okay.
When they lie to themselves, they have to use words. And they repeat those words in their head. I am not afraid. I am not afraid. I am not, but they're terrified. Or, I can do this, and they believe they can't. Yeah. So, but they're always using words to do that, because that kind of muscling through, it's like, what do you call it? White knuckling. People just like, they kind of like just, they repeat these mantras in their head, and they just try to, well, all of that is left-brained, and it leaves the badness of the threat intact. It does nothing to really change the thing that they're afraid of. They're just trying to meet that quantum of badness with a different quantum of positivity. So they had to like come up with these positive words and phrases in their heads to do it. But that doesn't really work, because you still have this thing that you're viewing as bad that doesn't have to be viewed that way. So what reframing does is it takes the actual badness and flips it into what is good. It's much better and much easier if you're hiking to view soreness as your muscles growing stronger, and you're happy about that. And then there's nothing left that you have to be hiding from with affirmations. And that's always the way it is. Whatever is the sore, vulnerable point in our experience, that's where the growth can occur. Growth only occurs in that kind of sore spot. Yeah. And then you get to see the growth that can occur there.
Yeah, but can you say, okay, this thing is, soreness is helping me grow, and that's a good thing. So that's a reframe. Yeah. But it's still painful, and I don't like pain.
So yeah, and so I think that there is a thing of seeing, how can pain bring out the best in me? How can this pain be more aligned, with my deepest meaning, my deepest values, my highest ideals, so that it actually can be loved. Ultimately, pain itself has to be reframed. But all of that takes place in silence. You don't need positive words spoken in your head to do it. We're never going to love pain per se. I'm not saying we should do that. But you can love everything that it brings to you, because it's capable of bringing practically unlimited, good, unlimited growth and service. So all these good things come to us by means of it. So it's, again, not per se, and I don't think people would, in their right minds, would pursue it in itself. But it does give advantages when you're pursuing something that is good and meaningful, and that's the initial kind of, growth taking place.
So how does this idea compare to another one, which I think is maybe part of stoicism, which is getting more popular these days, especially in tech circles, that you shouldn't worry about things you can't control, and you should just be primarily concerned with your own actions, which are what you can control. So it kind of has some similarities with reframing, right? So something bad happens to you, and that person will say, well, don't worry about the bad thing. You can't control that. Worry about your response to it. How does that compare to reframing?
I think there can be a lot of wisdom in saying, don't worry about that and focus your efforts in this way. But it's an even deeper wisdom that says that there's nothing to be feared in the badness. You have to see that badness in the whole context of your growth and the service that you can provide to others. And that badness in the context of love is actually taken up into love, leavened by it, turned into it. And so if a parent has to be inconvenienced by caring for the sick child, their love for the child makes that something, that is, the whole thing is beautiful, actually,
Yeah.
and lovable. Now, they wouldn't choose it, they wouldn't want their child to be sick, but the difficulty is allow the virtues of the ideals to shine even more brightly.
Mm-hmm.
And they allow you to show your affection for your child, in much more tender, caring ways. The same goes with taking care of anyone who's in need. That when other people, need help and are hurting, then that allows you to rise to the occasion. And so I think you actually need these challenges to be present in order for the ideals to really be lived.
Mm-hmm.
But the Stoics didn't understand love. And so they understood all the virtues, I think, just as golden means or moderation. And so I think they end up not being able to actually give people energy, and to give people the kind of what you would like to see in the exercise of virtue. The exercise of virtue should be energetic and
Yeah.
lively. And you don't always get that in the Stoics, but it is because it takes love to give it life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I won't comment on that. I've never met a real Stoic before, so.
I know there's just people who read them.
Yeah. um, so, okay, hey, we have some examples of situations that might encounter reframing. This, we're trying to kind of stump you here, because we heard that you claim that any situation can be reframed, and we have situations that maybe we think can't be reframed.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd like to put you to the test. How's that? Is that okay?
Exactly. Although I have to say that reframing is always putting something in the fuller context.
Yeah.
Right. So the for something to be not reframable, it would mean that there is no possible context wide enough and long enough to be able to give this meaning.
Okay.
And
So that's like
that's very few things.
So that's like a theoretical proof that reframing is always
Exactly.
possible. We need to see it really in action.
Exactly. Yes.
Because sometimes theory is too abstract,
Yeah, lots of things work in theory.
Yeah. So without further ado, okay, math homework. Actually, to be honest, I feel a little bit weird reading this.
Because you love math.
Because I love math. But I'll just read it anyway. I just hate math. I have an assignment to do for my new economics class, but I keep putting it off. I guess I'm dreading doing it. It's not due for another 3 days, so I think I'll just wait to get started on it. I'm not a math person anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So
super classic, right? There's all the fixed, view of self.
Whoa. Did you say all me?
No. The fixed view of self that people tend to have, like about their abilities with math. Math brings out fixed traits.
I thought you were calling me like self-centered, just because I was saying I'm not.
That's true.
It's not
because it wasn't. This wasn't you. Oh, okay.
No, it isn't. So that's kind of a key thing to notice here in this person's complaining, is that there's an underlying fixed mindset, fixed view of self that they don't believe that they
which means the context has been lost. Right. This is not like a broad view of life. Mm-hmm. It got, so everything gets just super reduced to this one issue and abilities on it. Right. So, but then go to now this person tried to reframe.
So, So they heard that reframe is possible. So they gave it a shot.
And they gave us an example.
And they said, the math isn't that hard. It's just an economics course. Once I get this assignment done, things will get more interesting. It's okay to not be a math person. I'm perfectly good at other things.
Exactly. And that shows how people attempt to reframe.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work. It's not real reframing at all.
Yeah. So it's like, once I get this thing done,
yes,
then I'll be fine because I won't have to put up with it anymore. So you're actually reaffirming the view that the thing is bad, because you're looking forward to not having to deal with it anymore.
Reframing takes the threat and turns that itself into an opportunity. And so it gets to the substance of the concern, you know. So that is what I would call, and I know you do too, call it substitution.
Yep.
Wouldn't you say that that's like they're
Yeah.
substituting the future class for this one?
Yeah.
Like, okay, let me get
Yeah.
through the bad part, and then there's more for me to look forward to.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah. Yeah.
it kind of helps maybe with not being in a bad mood. Like, okay, I have something to look forward to. I'm just going to kind of distract myself from the current
Hmm.
trouble with this
Hmm.
other thing that's nice. It's like when people
Right.
look forward to after finals going on vacation.
Right.
Like, oh,
Right.
okay, this is awful, but I know that I'll be, you know, on vacation soon.
Right. It's a great way to waste a week of your life.
Vacation? You think vacation is?
No, no, to the finals week that
Oh,
you're
I know.
complaining about the
Just
whole
getting
time.
it all done, and instead of seeing like that, this is actually exciting, and you know
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
this could be a time of
Potentially
thriving.
vacations too, but
Yeah.
so okay, so yeah, okay. Well, I mean, just one thing to note there. We talk a lot about outcomes and ends, and so outcomes are for the sake of ends. So one thing about reframing is that you're looking for the bigger context, the bigger goal,
Yeah.
the bigger end to fit out this thing into. Um,
Yeah.
Rather than like having the outcome, I want to enjoy my work. You're saying, okay, maybe I don't enjoy it, but
Hmm.
you're putting it in a new context, within context of growth and being a good student and ultimately
Hmm.
being able to serve. I mean, they're and I guess they're an economics major, this person, so they should want to get good at economics so they can serve others through that, and being good at
Yeah,
math is actually important to that.
and if you were to ask this person, now you can see also that what one of the things that this person does is kind of validate themselves. Like, it's
Uh-huh.
okay, you know,
Yeah.
I could be good at other things. It's like
Yeah.
they're just reassuring themselves with that, you
Right.
know, which everyone, you know, people do that from time to time, but it's not a strategy that really works in the long run. And it can undercut people's confidence.
Hmm.
Or I should say, it just makes confidence the issue. And confidence shouldn't be the
Hmm.
issue. The real work, bringing your intelligence to do the real work, that's the issue, not
Hmm.
how you feel about yourself. So you know, the issue isn't you. The issue is the math and how to do the best in this.
Yeah.
And if people had a broader view and they ask themselves, okay, if I, you know, find something challenging intellectually, and I learned to bring an attitude of curiosity to it, and having a sense of possibilities and optimism in general, would that help me in life? And the answer
Yeah.
would be obviously yes. So when something's hard for you, what would be the best way of responding with creativity, with
Hmm.
flexibility? So you forget the outcome of getting a good grade on this stuff, you
Right.
know, but instead, how do you want this opportunity to shape you? And then you're thinking about the whole of life. It's like, well, when I meet other challenges, would I like to be creative and flexible? And let me try how to do that now. I'm going to approach math in a new way that I've never approached it before. And then you could see that every fixed concept you have of yourself that holds you back, it's it's fundamentally false. And the real issue is not you and how you think about yourself or reassure yourself. The real issue is bringing your whole intelligence to creatively engage the challenge.
Hmm. And reframing sees it as an opportunity to do that.
Yeah, and it has that big context of life.
Absolutely.
So,
Awesome. Okay, well, I think that's it for today.
all right. Thanks a lot, Sharif.
So, Kevin, thanks so much for helping us through that. Maybe in the future we can do more, but
Well,
that's all for today. So, thanks so much for tuning in. We'll be around next week.